What am I doing? I can't be a game master. I mean, I played a game of Dungeons and Dragons once and I had fun, but the dungeon master had a lot to manage. I'm not organized enough. I'm not funny enough. I'm not smart enough. I can't do accents or improvise or do math or. Have these thoughts ever crossed your mind when considering running your very own tabletop RPG for your friends or family? Imposter Syndrome, a psychological experience where people feel like they are frauds or incompetent, even though they have evidence of their success. If you suffer or have suffered from imposter syndrome, keep listening. You may just find the cure. Welcome to Claim to Game. We help tabletop gamers have a great time with friends to experience amazing stories. It can be overwhelming to start and run great games. Let's make it easier for you to play any game you want to have fun with your friends. I'm Clint Shire. I've helped thousands of students in my career find their way to better themselves and better their game. With more than 10 years experience coaching, teaching, and developing easy-to-follow learning plans, I know I can help you too. It's time for you to make your claim to game. Hello, and welcome back to episode 32, season 2 of Claim to Game, still a predominantly educational fun podcast in which I am daring to coin the word fungicational. It's like a square anthropomorphic sponge that lives in a pineapple under the ocean next to a pink sea star. That feeling of being an imposter, of not being worthy to bear the title, nay, the mantle of Game Master, it can feel like a real burden at times. I felt like I was an imposter several times during my tabletop RPG journey and still can feel it to this day. I felt it when I played my first game of Dungeons and Dragons. I felt it when I ran my first game as the DM for Dungeons and Dragons. I felt it when I decided to branch out from just playing Dungeons and Dragons to try other tabletop RPGs, which required me to learn an entire new set of rules, as well as teach these rules to others who are playing the game at the table, sometimes for the very first time. How do you overcome that sense of feeling not enough? The sense that who you are cannot rise up to be who you want to become, whether that's in your life or when you engage in tabletop RPGs. I've got a helpful 3-letter acronym that helps me and can help you remember that you are no imposter. NYE, like New Year's Eve or Bill Nye the Science Guy. Heck, to help you remember, why don't you just imagine Bill Nye with one of those little party blower things riding down the Times Square ball as the ball drops from 10 to 0. Now that we have that visual in your head, here's what NYE stands for. N, no one is quite like you. Y, you do have experience. And E, everyone starts somewhere. Let's start with N, no one is quite like you. Have you ever stopped to think how truly unique you are? As of today, there are 8 billion people in the world. I think we hit that back in November of 2022. And there have been many more people who have lived and died before us since the beginning of humankind. And yet, no one is quite like you. Even if your genetic makeup is close to another human being's, kind of like identical twins are, there are so many factors which diversify even the twinsies. Besides genetics, our physical environment and individual experiences in life can never 100% be identical to anybody else's, and therefore that's another reason why no one is quite like you. And for tabletop gaming, this is both crucial and, in my opinion, every GM's superpower. For the Game Master faced with the challenge to convince their players it's urgent to access the town's secret power source to heal the curse laid upon it by the evil sea hag, or for the Game Master getting ready to describe the ferocious facial features and earth-shattering screech coming from the werebear, trundling full speed towards the heroes in the Forbidden Bog. For anyone taking a seat at the gaming table to run or even play a game, your unique self, your unique history and past and experiences, your schema that you have lived in your life, This is what gives you the right to be playing the game because no one is quite like you. No one is going to tell that story the way that you are going to tell it. And odds are, no one will tell the story created during that game the way you did it ever again. You are valuable simply because of who you are. And when you come to the game and tell your story to paint the picture of your imagination for your players, authentically being you, flavoring your NPCs or your make-believe world with your authentic, genuine self, you are in no way being an imposter. You are not deceiving anyone or pretending to be a game master. You already are a game master. As soon as you show up and start describing the scenes, rolling your dice, and determining outcomes, as soon as you show up and you have the right to be there, because of the way that you are doing it uniquely, you are no imposter. So no one is quite like you. And thank goodness. Otherwise, games would be boring as hell. Moving on to the letter Y. You do have experience. So objections that I've heard from new GMs that are considering running their first game or their first group, they sound something like this. I'm not creative enough to run a game. I can't talk in funny voices or accents. I won't be able to keep track of everything going on during the game. I'll need to learn so much to run the game well. I need to know all the rules perfectly. And my immediate response and true belief in all of these objections usually sounds something like this. Well, have you ever told somebody a story about your day? Have you ever seen a movie, a TV show, or read a book? Are you a living, breathing person and not a robot? And if they answer yes to any or all of these questions, and I've never had anybody tell me that they're a robot, when they say yes, I tell them, then you have all the experience you need to run a tabletop role-playing game. Because at its heart, a tabletop RPG is storytelling. Yeah, there might be dice, there might be rules that govern the outcomes, successful or not so successful outcomes of the story that you're trying to tell. But all that aside, you are telling a story. And you can learn the rules as you go and get more comfortable and as you GM more. Because humans have been telling stories for thousands of years. It is the way we connect with others. It's how we share experiences, emotions, lessons, information. Storytelling is ingrained into the fabric of our being. Mark Turner, cognitive scientist, linguist, and author, once said, "Narrative imagining, story, is the fundamental instrument of thought. Rational capacities depend on it. It is our chief means of looking into the future, or predicting, or planning, or explaining." So if you are a human being that can think and take in information from the environment, from the world around you, I believe you tell stories all the time. And if you tell stories and fundamentally you are hardwired to think and tell stories, I believe you have enough experience to GM a tabletop RPG. I once was playing a game where my character's name was Papa Zern, and I was a very old, very large, yet muscular centaur who was put in a very precarious situation for, I would think, any centaur. Centaur, for those of you guys that don't know, body of a horse, torso up as a man, a creature in mythology. In order to escape a cavern, Papa Zern, my centaur, needed to ascend nearly 100 feet into the air through an opening in the cavern ceiling. Now, a centaur is a fictional creature. It doesn't have wings or the power of flight, yet being a person in this world, hearing about ropes and pulleys and simple machines, probably when I was in third grade science, I was able to work with my fellow players to create an apparatus in the game world which pulled Papa Zern through the hole and then gallop on victoriously to the next adventure. Now, I didn't need to know anything about centaurs or caverns or tabletop role-playing games to answer my GM's question when he said to me, "So, how are you going to get to the top of the cavern?" I simply thought back to my life experience as to what could be used to lift me up. Honestly, I didn't really need to know anything about pulleys either. I just said, my friends who could get to the top have ropes. Could we use the ropes to create some sort of pulley to lift me up? My GM let me roll dice. I rolled higher than the number in his mind that I needed to beat, and off I went. My GM didn't need to know anything about centaurs or pulleys either. He just needed to have the sense to let me be creative and then use some basic rules to govern the outcome. So take from me, an old Papa Zern, you got plenty of experience to play and run a tabletop game. It's all in your noggin. in your life experience. Hey, quick pause on the episode. On Saturday, February 22nd, from 12 p.m. noon to 3 p.m. Central Time in Greenfield, Wisconsin, I am hosting an in-person workshop for 12 interested gamers at the Board Game Barristers store. The workshop is for those who are new to tabletop role-playing or just want to flex their collaborative storytelling muscles while having a good time. Perhaps you want to learn tactics and strategies to plan, run, and play games for yourself and for your friends. There will be a link to the registration page in the show notes, or you can directly email me at clint.shire@claimtogamepodcast.com if you have any questions. And registration begins at $25 per person for early bird pricing, and then it will increase to $35 as seats fill up. Registration includes $10 of store credit, which will be used towards the participants' 7-dice set of Chessex polyhedral dice, color of your choice. You will even get to play a quick one-shot tabletop RPG to get your creative juices flowing. Once again, the link to register is in the show notes. Thanks, and now back to the episode. And lastly, that brings us to E. Everyone starts somewhere. If you are anything like me, you may have started playing Dungeons & Dragons and were introduced to the big names in the industry, especially those known for being fantastic dungeon masters. Professional voice actor Matt Mercer, well known for his work as the dungeon master for the web series Critical Role since 2015. He's expressive, he's got all the voices and the accents, and yeah, he's a professional. He's even recently voiced Ganondorf in the 2023 game The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Matt Colville, a professional author, game designer, YouTuber who worked on countless tabletop RPGs since the early 2000s. Or maybe Chris Perkins, Canadian-American game designer and editor, well known for his work at Wizards of the Coast on the Dungeons & Dragons role-playing game since the late 90s, and Dungeon Master for the long-running Acquisitions Incorporated. When I watch those who have made their career playing tabletop games, even adapting their ideas and creativity into videos, movies, TV shows, books, and unique tabletop games themselves, my imposter syndrome kicks in big time. How can I be a GM when they seem so amazing at what they do? How can I banish this imposter syndrome? Well, I remember the E in NYE. Everyone starts somewhere. I'm a practitioner of the Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod, and since late 2024, I've been enjoying the ancient traditions of silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. Hal calls these the savers to work towards a better version of yourself. If you're curious about the Miracle Morning, I'll pop a link to Hal's book in the show notes, but since it was published back in 2012, the Miracle Morning has launched a series of books related to the original Miracle Morning method. Currently, I've moved on to read the Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs, and what I've found is that the A in the savers, affirmations, really comes in handy when trying to kick my imposter syndrome to the curb. I'm talking about imposter syndrome in my business, my roles as a husband and father, and even my roles as a player and game master in the games that I run. I'll share a few affirmations here I believe are applicable when I start to feel nowhere near as good as Mercer, Colville, or Perkins. I will adapt them for the game master who needs to remember who they truly are in the face of imposter syndrome. Affirmation 1, I am just as worthy, deserving, and capable of achieving my ideal outcome as any other game master on earth, and I will prove that when I prepare and play with my actions. Number 2, I leave every story and every session that I GM better than where I found it. I genuinely care about making sure my players and I are having fun and everyone feels safe. Players in my group are glad they participate in our group. Number 3, the game master's role is not about me. It's about connecting with the players at my table to have fun and tell truly amazing stories that only we can tell. Number 4, one of the true secrets to success as a game master is to be committed to the process without being emotionally attached to perfect results. I can always control my preparation before my game, my attitudes during the game, and the actions I take to help the group be both safe and fun. Number 5, I focus on learning new things and improving my skills more than running the perfect game. Progress, never perfection. And number 6, I dedicate each session I run as game master to helping my players shine in moments that will allow them to live out meaningful stories. All right, final thoughts. I'm sure that I could list many more affirmations, and I'm sure there are other strategies that we could explore to better our methods of growing as a GM. But if you are someone who feels not good enough, take a deep breath. Remember Bill Nye, the science guy, riding down on that ball from 10 to 0 in Times Square. And remember Nye, N-Y-E, N, no one is quite like you. Y, you do have experience. And E, everyone starts somewhere. You'll be busting imposter syndrome in no time. And if you want to do more work on this and dig a little deeper into each of the NYE sections, go download the CTG's NYE Imposter Syndrome Buster Worksheet. Man, that's a mouthful. In just 10 minutes or less, with a little introspective soul searching, you can list out concrete details that will help remind you that you are no imposter. Keep that sheet near your core rule books for your games. Keep it near your notebooks for creative thoughts. You got this. Join us next time as we find the best ways to have great times with friends and experience amazing stories through tabletop role-playing. There are so many tabletop RPGs that you can choose from. It can be overwhelming which one to pick. To help you out, I've created a free quiz to determine which game is the best fit for you and your group. Click on the link in the show notes to access your quiz, answer each question to the best of your ability, and by the end, you'll get a recommendation for a game you should definitely try out for your next game night. Games are curated from a list based on community favorites and current market popularity, so you'll be guaranteed to find an excellent tabletop game. And may you keep having fun as we continue to make our claim to game.